rise, betrayed by the jaw when the weight of the world presses too hard. Most men rush to paint that canvas with noise, with effort, with explanations, and with the desperate need to be understood. They overcorrect, they perform, they chase reactions. But the most powerful men do something radically different. They leave it unfinished. In that restraint, silence becomes an aura, not emptiness, but presence. Stillness becomes a language spoken without sound. Control becomes a message louder than any declaration. True power does not announce itself. It does not demand attention or rush to prove relevance. It does not plead to be chosen. It simply exists, anchored, unmoving, and in its presence others feel an almost magnetic pull to lean in, to decode, to understand what is not being offered freely. A man who chases is readable, predictable, and transparent in his urgency. A man who stands still becomes a ghost, felt before he is understood, remembered before he is explained, sensed rather than analyzed. Look closely at a man who does not pursue validation. His posture is relaxed but intentional, not careless. His shoulders settle naturally. His breathing is slow. His eyes do not scan the room for approval. They observe, measure, and remain calm. He's not withdrawn, not disconnected, not cold. He's contained. His emotions are not spilling outward because they are governed inwardly. This is not arrogance. This is not emotional unavailability. This is mastery. Most men misunderstand attraction because they confuse motion with influence. They believe effort creates value, pursuit earns attention, and noise commands respect. But in reality, value creates pursuit. Gravity does not chase matter. Matter moves toward gravity. The man who understands this principle does not raise his voice. He does not compete for space. He does not rush forward to be seen. He allows the room to adjust to him. He becomes a shadow, present, grounded, unavoidable. And when a man stops chasing, something subtle but irreversible happens. The tension reverses. The dynamic shifts. The world, sensing certainty, turns toward him. Number one, the silent axis of power. The man who does not chase is not passive, he is anchored. And that distinction changes everything once you see it clearly. Passivity is a loss of center, a quiet drift where energy spills outward in scattered reactions, while anchoring is concentration, the deliberate gathering of self into a stable core. When a man becomes anchored, his emotional center no longer lives in response to texts, glances, validation, or rejection. It lives within him, steady and unmoved. His breath naturally slows because there is no internal panic to outrun. His movements simplify because there is no need to perform. His presence begins to feel heavier, not in an aggressive or imposing way, but in the way gravity feels heavy, inevitable, calm, and undeniable. This is where most misunderstandings about Sigma males collapse. The refusal to chase is not a tactic, not a game, and not rejection. It is orientation. His life is oriented inward before it ever expresses outward. He wakes with direction instead of urgency and clarity instead of hunger. He listens without rehearsing responses because he is not seeking control of the outcome. He speaks without over-explaining because he trusts that what needs to land will land. There is no nervous energy behind his words, no rush to be understood, and people feel this immediately, even if they cannot explain it. The human nervous system is exquisitely sensitive to coherence. When a man's inner state is aligned, when his thoughts, emotions, and actions point in the same direction, others subconsciously begin to synchronize to it. This is why silence becomes his aura, not because he withholds or plays distant, but because he does not leak. The man who chases leaks attention, intention, and self-worth into the external world, hoping something will return it. The anchored man stands still, and in standing still, he gathers attention without asking for it. His stillness creates contrast in a world of noise, motion, and desperation. He becomes a reference point, a quiet axis around which conversations subtly reorganize. Emotions settle, and curiosity begins to orbit. People lean in without realizing why. This is the beginning of influence. Not force, not persuasion, not performance, but presence. A presence that does not pursue because it does not need to. And in that absence of need, something powerful and unmistakable emerges. Number 2, emotional regulation as unspoken authority. Most men are ruled by momentum. Emotion surges, reaction follows, words spill, and the moment passes with regret. Life becomes a series of reflexes rather than choices. The composed man interrupts this cycle at its root. He does not suppress emotion because suppression leaks. He regulates it. Regulation is not numbness, not indifference, not coldness. It is delayed. It is the quiet space between stimulus and response where power is decided. He feels the same rush of anger, attraction, fear, or excitement as any other man, but he does not allow it to seize the wheel. He observes it, names it internally, and lets it pass through without acting prematurely. This is why certain men appear unreadable under pressure. Their face remains neutral, not because nothing is happening inside, but because everything is being processed rather than discharged. The nervous system stays anchored. Breath remains slow. The body does not betray the mind. This is the quality people mistakenly romanticize in cinematic figures. Not their chaos, not their destruction, not their volatility, but their containment. Containment is discipline made visible. When pressure rises, most men speed up. Their speech tightens. Their gestures grow restless. Their need to prove something becomes obvious. The composed man slows down. His pupils are steady. His jaw loosens. His voice lowers by half a register. His movements become economical, almost minimal, as if nothing extra is required. And suddenly the room recalibrates around him. Conversations soften. Tension redistributes. Others unconsciously mirror his pace. Authority does not come from volume, dominance displays, or forced confidence. It comes from nervous system dominance. The man who remains calm when others are tense becomes the emotional leader without ever asking for the role. People begin to defer without knowing why. Women sense this immediately, not intellectually, not through analysis, but biologically. Calm signals safety. Safety creates openness. Openness invites curiosity. Curiosity invites pursuit. This is not manipulation, and it is not strategy. It is resonance. His presence communicates nothing here is out of control. Over time, this composure becomes a reputation that precedes him. He is trusted in chaos. He is sought in uncertainty. His calm becomes a shadow that follows him into every interaction, subtle yet undeniable, shaping outcomes before a single word is spoken. Number 3, the Stoic lineage of non-chasing men. This posture is ancient, older than language, older than theory, and older than the need to explain itself. Long before modern psychology tried to dissect behavior into labels and frameworks, disciplined men lived by an internal code that required no applause. The Stoics understood a fundamental truth that still unsettles the modern mind. The man who governs himself cannot be easily governed by others. Marcus Aurelius did not chase admiration, loyalty, or affection because he understood that dependence is a quiet form of weakness. He cultivated inner order instead. His power was quiet, because it was complete, self-sustaining, and not dependent on extraction. He did not need to pull energy, attention, or validation from others to feel whole. This is precisely where modern men become lost. They seek externally what must be constructed internally. They confuse attention with respect, intensity with depth, and reaction with purpose. The Stoic man moves differently. He builds a life that does not require constant validation. His identity is not renegotiated daily based on moods, approval, or social feedback. His values are stable because they are chosen, not borrowed. His emotions are not suppressed, but they are also not obeyed blindly. They are acknowledged, processed, and released without spectacle. This creates a rare kind of gravity. People instinctively lean toward men who are not internally fragmented, men whose presence feels grounded rather than performative. The refined Sigma male is not antisocial, detached, or emotionally barren. He is self-contained. He does not broadcast scarcity. He does not rush to be understood. He becomes a masterpiece, not through intensity, but through consistency. Day after day, he chooses restraint over reaction, depth over display, silence over noise, and presence over performance. He understands that power compounds quietly, the way structure compounds in architecture, invisible until it is undeniable. Over time, this discipline reshapes how the world responds to him. What looks like indifference from the outside is actually devotion to inner structure. What looks like distance is clarity. What looks like mystery is simply a man who no longer leaks his energy into places that cannot hold it. Number 4, why attraction moves towards centered men. Attraction is often misunderstood as desire responding to effort, as if consistency, attention, and pursuit are currencies that can be exchanged for affection. In reality, attraction responds to orientation, not effort. People are drawn to what feels complete, not to what is trying to be completed through them. A man who chases unconsciously communicates lack. His movement says he is leaning forward, reaching outward, attempting to fill a space inside himself. A man who stands grounded communicates the opposite. He signals fullness, not superiority, not arrogance, but inner stability. His presence suggests that his emotional center is intact, whether or not anyone chooses him. This is emotional self-sufficiency. He enjoys connection, but he does not rely on it to regulate his worth, his mood, or his identity. That distinction is subtle, but it is everything. This is where polarity is born. Not dominance over women, not control or manipulation, but stability beside them. When someone stands firm within themselves, others instinctively orient toward them. Women chase, not because they are tricked or strategically influenced, but because curiosity awakens in the presence of emotional depth. Depth feels rare. It feels unresolved in a way that invites exploration. The man who does not chase becomes a ghost in the mind. He lingers because he does not rush to conclude the story. He does not over-explain himself or collapse mystery through excess availability. His pacing invites imagination. His restraint invites projection. And projection fuels desire because the mind fills silence with meaning. This is why availability without boundaries dissolves attraction, while selective presence amplifies it. Constant access removes tension. Predictability closes the loop too quickly. But a man who understands himself understands timing. He knows when to step forward and when to remain still. He understands that space is not distance but breathing room. It is the pause that allows anticipation to grow. He does not rush intimacy because he does not fear loss. He allows connection to unfold naturally. trusting that what aligns will move toward him without force. In this way, attraction becomes effortless, not because he is passive, but because he is centered. And when a man is centered, others feel it before he ever says a word. Number 5, the power of being unfinished. There is elegance in not revealing everything. The refined Sigma understands that meaning loses power when it is poured out all at once. He does not trauma dump to create false intimacy, nor does he overshare to be understood quickly. He does not explain himself into transparency just to reduce tension. Instead, he allows discovery to unfold naturally. This is not secrecy driven by fear. It is craftsmanship driven by self-respect. Like a great work of art, he reveals himself in layers, not because he is hiding, but because depth deserves time. Each interaction adds texture rather than exhaustion. Each conversation leaves something untouched. People sense that there is more beneath the surface, something unresolved, something unconsumed. That depth has not been drained, and so they return again and again. Curiosity is sustained not by mystery alone, but by restraint. This is the ghost effect at its highest expression. Not disappearance, but subtle withdrawal from excess. He does not vanish. He simply refuses to overstay. He leaves conversation slightly early, not out of disinterest, but out of discipline. He speaks slightly less than expected, allowing his words to land instead of spill. He permits silence to remain unresolved, understanding that silence often communicates more than explanation ever could. In that silence, others project value, intention, and meaning. And in doing so, he teaches them how to value his time without ever stating a boundary aloud. His absence speaks without accusation. His presence feels intentional rather than automatic. When he arrives, it feels chosen. When he leaves, it feels earned. There is no desperation in his energy, no need to anchor himself through constant availability. He understands that attention is not captured through pursuit, but through structure. When a man is always present, he becomes background noise. When a man is selectively present, he becomes a signal. This is where influence becomes effortless. He no longer needs to chase attention, approval, or validation. Attention follows structure. Respect follows rhythm. People lean in because there is room to lean. They listen because not everything has already been said. And over time, without raising his voice or demanding space, the refined Sigma becomes unforgettable. Not because he revealed everything, but because he never gave it away too easily. Number 6, becoming the calm others orbit. The final evolution is this: the man becomes the calm that others unconsciously orient themselves around. Not because he demands attention, but because his presence resolves tension the way silence resolves noise. He is no longer proving anything to the world, to women, to rivals, or even to his past self. The urge to perform has dissolved. The reflex to react has softened. Where there was once friction, there is now flow. His life moves with rhythm rather than urgency. His days have structure but not rigidity. His thoughts are ordered, not obsessive. His emotions pass through him like weather rather than chains. He feels deeply, but he is not ruled by feeling. This is elite self-mastery, and it is often misunderstood. It is not coldness. It is not emotional withdrawal. It is not indifference disguised as strength. It is integration. He has faced his shadow, not to destroy it, but to understand it. He knows his hunger, his anger, his desire, his competitiveness, and his capacity for darkness. He does not suppress these forces, nor does he let them leak out unconsciously. He chooses when and how to engage them. Because of this, his energy is clean, There is no desperation beneath his words, no hidden agenda behind his kindness, no neediness hiding inside his silence. People feel this immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. His presence feels grounded, safe, intriguing, rare. In a world addicted to speed, he moves deliberately. In a culture obsessed with validation, he is internally anchored. The world today is loud, frantic, overstimulated, and constantly chasing something it cannot name. Attention, approval, status, relief. Most men are pulled outward by this noise, reacting to every stimulus, every message, and every opportunity to be seen. The man who does not chase stands in quiet contrast to all of it. He does not withdraw from life, but he does not run after it either. He builds, he refines, he observes, and contrast is powerful. Contrast creates attraction without effort, not only romantically, but also socially, professionally, and spiritually. People lean toward what feels stable in an unstable environment. Opportunities find those who are not grasping for them. Respect gathers around those who are not begging for it. When a man becomes still inside, the world begins to move toward him on its own terms. Conversations deepen, trust forms faster, invitations appear without pursuit. This is not mysticism, it is psychological gravity. Calm is rare, self-command is magnetic. And inevitability replaces urgency. He no longer chases outcomes. He prepares himself. He no longer seeks to be chosen. He becomes someone others choose naturally, quietly, without pressure, without pursuit, and without him ever needing to ask. The face is a canvas most people never learn to read. They study words, posture, reputation, volume, performance, but they miss the quiet truth written beneath the eyes, the micro shifts that reveal when something fundamental has changed. There is a moment, rare, almost invisible, when a man's expression alters not with anger, not with grief, but with withdrawal. Not loud, not dramatic, just absent. The eyes soften, not with peace, but with distance. The jaw loosens, not in surrender, but in release. The urgency evaporates, and in that moment, everything is already over, even though nothing appears to have ended. Because true power never announces its departure. It doesn't slam doors, doesn't raise its voice, doesn't argue its case, or demand to be understood. It simply goes silent. Most people misunderstand strength. They think it is pressure, dominance, control, noise. They confuse reaction with authority. But real authority has no need to convince. It does not chase outcomes or beg for recognition. It observes, it measures, it waits. And when it stops caring, it does not return, because what has been withdrawn was not emotion but access. This is not the story of rage. This is the story of restraint. The most dangerous moment in a man's evolution is not when he becomes aggressive. It is when he becomes still. Still enough to see clearly without emotional fog. Still enough to detach without hatred. Still enough to let go without resentment. His presence changes in ways that are hard to explain but impossible to ignore. His aura grows quieter, heavier, denser. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't explain. He doesn't seek closure. He becomes a ghost, not because he disappears, but because he is no longer reachable. People mistake this for indifference. They assume he never cared. They are wrong. He cared deeply, so deeply, that he learned the cost of caring without return. What looks like coldness is actually discernment. What looks like distance is precision. This man is not reacting. He is editing his life with surgical calm. He is removing what no longer aligns, no longer nourishes, no longer respects the architecture of his inner world. And once you are removed from the final draft, you are not written back in. This is the art most never master, leaving without destruction, detaching without bitterness, choosing calm as power. Now, let's dive deeper. The silent turning point. The moment a man stops caring is rarely dramatic. There is no final argument, no explosion, no betrayal. There's only a quiet recalibration, an internal decision made without witnesses. He listens, but no longer absorbs every word as a verdict on his worth. He observes, but no longer reacts as if every moment demands proof of loyalty or emotion. He speaks, but only when language serves purpose, not validation. Emotion is no longer gripping the steering wheel of his life. It has been moved to the passenger seat, acknowledged but restrained. This is not numbness, and it is not bitterness. This is mastery earned through repetition and pain. Caring once made him available, always reachable, always explainable. It made him predictable, easy to read, easy to manipulate. It taught others that his time, his energy, his patience were endlessly renewable. But life corrected that illusion. Slowly, unmistakably, he learned a painful truth. Attention without reciprocity erodes the self. Effort without respect drains the spirit, and presence without appreciation becomes a quiet form of self-betrayal. He did not announce this realization. He did not demand apologies or closure. He adjusted, not outwardly where ego performs and noise attracts resistance, but inwardly where real power is cultivated. The withdrawal begins quietly, beneath the surface in the shadow where discipline is forged and boundaries are hardened. Here he learns to conserve instead of chase, to choose silence over explanation, to value alignment over approval. When a man stops caring in this way, he does not disappear. He becomes unreachable to chaos. He is still capable of depth, loyalty, and warmth, but only where they are met with equal weight. What looks like detachment from the outside is, in truth, the final stage of self-respect taking root. Composure over chaos, a cinematic study. Cinema misunderstood the Sigma male for years. It glorified rage, violence, outbursts, and explosions of emotion mistaken for power. But the real lesson was never in the bloodshed. It was in the pauses, the silence between words, the seconds when nothing happens, yet everything is decided. Watch closely, not the actions, but the stillness. Patrick Bateman is not terrifying because he is violent. He is unsettling because he is controlled. His face rarely changes. His voice never rushes. Even chaos cannot pull him out of rhythm. That composure is what unsettles people. Thomas Shelby is not powerful because he dominates rooms. He is powerful because nothing dominates him. Pressure does not speed him up. Threats do not bend his posture. The jaw stays relaxed under stress. The eyes never dart in search of approval or escape. The breathing never betrays the mind. This is not arrogance. This is regulation. Elite men do not chase control. They embody it. They understand that emotional reactions are tells, and a man with no tells cannot be manipulated. He cannot be rushed, baited, or steered by provocation. His power is internal, not performative. His aura is not aggressive. It is gravitational. It does not demand attention. It draws it. People feel it before they understand it. Conversations slow around him. Noise fades. Others reveal more than they intend because silence invites projection. This is why the Sigma male has always been misunderstood. Cinema showed the surface and missed the core. True dominance is not loud. It does not announce itself. It sits comfortably in stillness, letting the world expose itself first. In that quiet space, leverage is built, outcomes are shaped, and control is maintained without a single word being raised. The Stoic lineage of detachment. This is not new. Long before modern psychology tried to name emotional regulation, men who carried real power understood the same principle at a visceral level. Centuries ago, emperors and philosophers were forced to master the inner world because failure meant collapse, not embarrassment. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth while burying children, surviving plagues that emptied cities, and enduring betrayal from those closest to him. Yet his composure remained intact, not because he was numb, not because he lacked emotion, but because he understood something most people never learn. Power begins with self-governance. Stoicism was never about suppressing emotion or pretending pain doesn't exist. It was about emotional ownership. Aurelius did not write to escape suffering. He wrote to give suffering its proper place. Inside discipline, where emotion could not hijack action. Inside perspective, where pain was contextualized instead of dramatized. Inside reason, where impulse was filtered before it became destruction. This is the same principle at work when a sigma male reaches the moment people misinterpret as not caring anymore. The sigma who stops caring does not stop feeling. He still experiences disappointment, loss, anger, and grief. What changes is authority. Emotion no longer rules him. Reaction no longer dictates his decisions. He does not lash out, chase validation, or explain himself to regain comfort. He observes, processes, and moves with precision. That shift is subtle, but it alters everything. People sense it immediately. Conversations change. Power dynamics reverse. Respect replaces manipulation. Silence becomes heavier than words. When a man governs himself first, the world no longer governs him at all. When caring becomes a liability, there is a phase every man passes through. A quiet season where he gives freely without keeping score, where he listens deeply to words and silences alike, and where he explains himself endlessly, believing that clarity will create understanding and that consistency will create respect. In this phase, he assumes effort will eventually be recognized, that loyalty will naturally be mirrored, and that patience will be honored simply because it is rare. Sometimes it is, but often it is not. And the realization does not arrive as betrayal or conflict, but as a subtle pattern that repeats itself until it becomes impossible to ignore. Conversations feel one-sided. Presence feels expected rather than appreciated. And his availability becomes an assumption rather than a gift. And then the lesson arrives quietly, without drama or confrontation. Your energy is being taken for granted. Not maliciously, not intentionally, but consistently, through small acts of disregard, delayed respect, and unreciprocated effort. That is when refinement begins. This is not the moment of anger or withdrawal driven by ego. This is the moment of recalibration. The Sigma does not announce his boundaries or issue warnings. He embodies them through silence, selectivity, and restraint. He stops correcting misunderstandings that were never meant to be understood. He stops defending intentions to people who benefit from misinterpreting them. He stops proving value to those who only noticed him when he overextended himself. Not because he is bitter, and not because he lacks compassion, but because he has measured the cost with clarity. He has observed the emotional taxation, the mental drain, and the erosion of self-respect that comes from being endlessly available, and the cost is too high. From that point forward, his energy becomes precise, his presence becomes intentional, and his silence becomes a boundary that requires no explanation. The art of remaining unreadable. Unpredictability is not chaos. It is precision without disclosure, a deliberate refusal to broadcast intention. The man who has stopped caring no longer telegraphs emotion, because emotion, once displayed, becomes leverage for others. He understands that what is visible can be measured, and what can be measured can be manipulated. So he moves quietly, not from fear but from mastery. He does not explain his silence because explanations invite debate, and debate invites intrusion. He does not justify his distance because justification hands over authority to those who never earned it. He does not negotiate his peace because peace is not a contract. It is a boundary. This is not manipulation, this is containment, the art of holding power inward rather than dispersing it outward. Psychology confirms what ancient wisdom already knew. Emotional restraint increases perceived authority because steadiness reads as leadership. Calm under pressure signals competence because chaos belongs to the unprepared. Silence amplifies presence because the mind fills quiet with meaning, and meaning commands attention. As he withdraws from emotional spectacle, he becomes difficult to categorize, and what cannot be categorized cannot be predicted, and what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. People search for patterns in him and find none they can exploit. They test him and meet composure instead of reaction. Over time, they realize the shift is permanent. His strength is not loud. His confidence is not performative. His identity is no longer assembled from approval, conflict, or explanation. His masterpiece is not his success, not the symbols he accumulates, and not the victories others can see. His masterpiece is his inner architecture, the quiet system of discipline, restraint, and self-governance that allows him to stand unmoved while the world demands a reaction. He does not dominate the room by force. He stabilizes it by presence. And in that stillness, everything else recalibrates around him. Why people panic when he withdraws? When a Sigma male stops caring, the shift is immediate and unmistakable, not because he announces a boundary or explains a decision, but because the emotional current changes in a way people instinctively feel. The silence comes first, subtle but heavy, as responses slow and pauses stretch, not from resentment but from awareness. He no longer rushes to reply, no longer fills gaps with reassurance, and no longer manages emotions that were never his responsibility to carry. There is no argument, no dramatic ending, no explosion of words, only restraint. And restraint unsettles those who were used to unrestricted access. For a long time, his presence felt constant, his attention dependable, and his emotional strength quietly available whenever tension arose. He listened, absorbed chaos, stabilized situations, and made it all look effortless. That effortlessness was mistaken for permanence. When it disappears, people call it abandonment, but what they are truly experiencing is the loss of entitlement. He hasn't withdrawn in anger, he has returned to himself. Where there was constant engagement, there is now space, and space forces reflection. In that quiet, insecurities surface and expectations collapse. Some adapt, gaining respect and maturity, understanding that presence is a choice. Others resist, provoking, testing, and seeking proof he still cares. But he does not react because caring no longer means performing. It means choosing, and that choice rearranges power completely. He doesn't vanish, he becomes unreachable. The difference between apathy and sovereignty. Apathy is collapse. Sovereignty is elevation. The Sigma who stops caring does not disengage from life. He disengages from drain. This distinction matters because apathy is the absence of meaning, while sovereignty is the presence of choice. When a Sigma stops caring, he is not numbing himself or retreating into indifference. He is reclaiming authorship over his inner world. He has learned often through repeated disappointment. That indiscriminate care is not virtue, it is leakage. Energy spent without discernment erodes clarity, purpose, and strength. So he refines. He still loves but no longer begs for understanding. He still builds but no longer over-explains his vision. He still connects but no longer chases reciprocity from those incapable of depth. What disappears is not feeling, but waste. His time becomes curated because time is the only currency that never replenishes. His attention becomes deliberate because attention shapes identity. His emotional investment becomes rare because emotions, once scattered, lose their power to bond, motivate, and transform. And rarity increases value. This is why his presence feels heavier when he enters a room, quieter yet more commanding. People sense the compression of focus, the absence of neediness, and the calm of someone no longer seeking permission to exist as he is. This is not strategy, because strategy implies manipulation and performance. This is evolution, the natural outcome of self-respect meeting reality. The Sigma who stops caring has simply stopped bleeding for environments that never intended to heal him. What remains is not coldness but precision, not detachment but alignment. He has not shut his heart, he has armored his boundaries, and in doing so he rises not above others but above his former self. The final withdrawal, when he is lost forever. The day you lose him forever is not when he leaves, it is when he stays but no longer reaches. He is still present in the room, still answering when spoken to, still carrying himself with that familiar calm. Yet something essential has withdrawn. His words are measured, not because he is afraid to speak, but because he has learned the cost of speaking too much. He is polite, composed, and unreactive, not cold, just complete. The warmth that once flowed freely has been retracted, not out of resentment, but out of self-respect. What you are witnessing is not distance, it is containment. The ghost remains, but the door is closed. Where there was once access, there is now silence. Where there was once explanation, there is now understanding without negotiation. And once closed, it is rarely reopened, not because of pride, ego, or punishment, but because reopening would violate the man he has become. He has already paid for the lesson in full. He has integrated the wound without building his identity around it. He no longer seeks validation, resolution, or emotional leverage. He has reclaimed his center, and from that center he does not chase, convince, or perform. He observes, he chooses, he stays sovereign. This is what mastery looks like when it is quiet. This is what happens when a man befriends his shadow instead of being ruled by it. He has faced it, understood it, and set it in its proper place. And when that happens, something irreversible occurs. You may still see him. You may still speak to him. But the version of him that reached for you has already moved on. The quiet truth. The most powerful men do not dominate rooms. They quietly redefine them, entering without force, yet shifting the emotional gravity. They do not demand attention. They alter the atmosphere. And when they stop caring, it is not punishment. It is alignment. Because true influence is mastery over self, not control of others. Most men are taught, consciously and unconsciously, that strength must be visible in order to be valid, that confidence must be announced through posture, tone, or dominance, and that masculinity requires constant external proof. From an early age, this conditioning creates a narrow and predictable behavioral landscape. Within this landscape, people learn to read one another quickly because most emotional responses follow familiar scripts. Escalation when challenged, defensiveness when exposed, justification when questioned, confrontation when threatened, or withdrawal when overwhelmed. These patterns provide social certainty. They allow others to anticipate outcomes, regulate their own responses, and feel psychologically oriented within an interaction. The Sigma male does not fit cleanly into this structure, not because he rejects society or seeks to position himself above it, but because his internal reference point is not socially constructed. His actions arise from internal alignment rather than external pressure, expectation, or validation. This is where discomfort begins. Human psychology depends heavily on feedback loops. When someone does not provide expected emotional signals, the brain struggles to categorize them. The absence of familiar cues disrupts prediction, and prediction is central to psychological safety. Ambiguity triggers vigilance. What cannot be read cannot be easily managed. What cannot be managed is often interpreted as a potential threat, even when no harm is present. The Sigma male's presence introduces uncertainty into systems that rely on emotional predictability for balance. He does not mirror anxiety, does not escalate when provoked, and does not over-clarify his intentions to soothe others. This is not calculated detachment. It is the byproduct of an internal locus of control. He's guided by internal coherence rather than social calibration. He does not intend to unsettle others, nor does he seek to intimidate. He simply does not adjust his internal state to regulate the emotional comfort of those around him. This quiet refusal, often unconscious, creates a subtle power imbalance. Those accustomed to influencing behavior through emotional cues experience this as unease, tension, or quiet apprehension. The discomfort does not arise from aggression, but from independence. What follows are 6 behaviors that produce this effect unintentionally, not as strategies or performances, but as natural consequences of psychological self-sovereignty. Point 1, they remain emotionally still when provoked. Emotional provocation is one of the oldest and most instinctive social tools in human interaction. It is often deployed unconsciously, not as a calculated strategy, but as a reflex meant to test boundaries, assert dominance, relieve inner insecurity, or extract reassurance from others. In most cases, it works precisely because most people respond automatically. They defend themselves, counterattack, over-explain, justify their position, or emotionally withdraw. Each of these reactions completes the emotional loop. It confirms to the provocateur that their stimulus landed, that they successfully influenced the internal state of the other person. Balance is restored, but at the cost of psychological leverage. The Sigma male disrupts this entire mechanism by refusing to participate in the cycle. When criticized, mocked, challenged, or subtly undermined, his internal state does not immediately shift. There's no rush to respond, no visible spike in emotion. He listens, he observes. He allows the emotional charge to move through the environment without absorbing it into his nervous system. This is not emotional suppression, nor is it indifference. It is emotional regulation in its most refined form. From a psychological perspective, this creates dissonance in the person attempting the provocation. The expected reaction never arrives. Without emotional feedback, the other person's nervous system remains activated, unsettled, and searching for closure. Over time, this unresolved tension is often misinterpreted as superiority, silent judgment, or hidden aggression, even though none of these are present. The Sigma male is simply unavailable for emotional manipulation. His nervous system is self-contained and internally regulated. This self-containment communicates strength at a biological level. Calmness under pressure signals to the human brain that the individual does not perceive a threat. And humans instinctively become uneasy around those who remain calm in situations where fear, defensiveness, or agitation are expected. The Sigma male neither escalates nor retreats. He stays centered, grounded, and internally sovereign. This neutrality removes leverage from the interaction and leaves others alone with their own emotional output, which is deeply uncomfortable for those who rely on reaction to feel control. Point 2, they do not explain themselves. Explanation is often mistaken for clarity, but psychologically it is more often a quiet request for acceptance. When people explain themselves excessively, they are not merely sharing logic. They are managing perception. They are attempting to soften judgment, preempt criticism, or regain a sense of social safety. Explanation becomes a form of negotiation, a way to remain emotionally aligned with the group. The Sigma male does not operate from this psychological posture. His decisions are formed internally through private evaluation rather than collective reassurance. Once a decision is made, it is already settled within him. Because of this, he does not feel compelled to narrate his reasoning unless practical coordination genuinely requires it. He understands intuitively or through experience that not every choice needs to be socially processed. This refusal to over-explain quietly disrupts expectations. Many people are accustomed to explanation as an entry point, a place where they can question, challenge, persuade, guilt, or emotionally influence outcomes. When an explanation is offered, it creates conversational leverage. When it is withheld, that leverage disappears. There is nothing to debate, nothing to reinterpret, nothing to pull apart. The Sigma male's silence is often misread as coldness or dismissal, but psychologically it is neither. It is self-authorization. He does not place his decisions into the social arena for approval, because he does not experience approval as a prerequisite for action. This creates unease in others, not because they are being disrespected, but because their usual tools no longer function. The illusion of influence collapses. People are left facing a boundary that does not argue, defend, or explain itself. That boundary feels immovable. The absence of justification signals inner certainty, and certainty that does not seek reinforcement appears unshakable. From an evolutionary and psychological standpoint, humans are instinctively wary of individuals who do not require validation, because such individuals cannot be easily steered through praise, guilt, fear of exclusion, or social pressure. They are not reactive to emotional incentives. The Sigma male's calm refusal to explain communicates something deeper than confidence. It communicates internal closure. The decision is complete. There is no open loop. And where there is no open loop, there is no entry point for control. This is why his silence carries weight. It is not loud authority, but quiet finality. It says, without words, this has already been decided. And the human psyche recognizes that statement as power. Point 3, they appear unmoved by social hierarchies. Social hierarchies quietly organize nearly every aspect of human interaction. Titles, roles, popularity, credentials, and perceived authority act as shortcuts, allowing people to quickly determine who should lead, who should follow, and how much psychological weight another person's opinion should carry. Most individuals absorb these hierarchies early in life and carry them unconsciously into adulthood, adjusting their tone, posture and self-expression based on where they believe they stand. The Sigma male recognizes these structures clearly, but he does not internalize them. He sees hierarchy as a social tool, not as a measure of human worth. As a result, he does not defer automatically, nor does he challenge authority out of insecurity or ego. His responses are measured, situational, and grounded in observation rather than assumption. He treats people according to their behavior, consistency, and character, not according to rank or label. This alone creates tension because many identities are built almost entirely on position. When someone's status fails to produce the expected emotional reaction, fear, admiration, compliance, or submission, it creates a subtle psychological rupture. The Sigma male does not compete for dominance, nor does he submit for approval. He stands adjacent to the hierarchy rather than inside it, interacting when necessary, but remaining internally untouched. Psychologically, this is deeply unsettling to those who rely on hierarchy for validation. Social structures function not because they are inherently real, but because people agree to them emotionally and reinforce them through behavior. When someone disengages internally while remaining outwardly calm, the structure loses its power in that moment. The Sigma male's neutrality communicates something rare and disarming. Status neither impresses him nor intimidates him. This is often misread as arrogance, defiance, or coldness, but it is none of these. It is independence of valuation. He does not need to feel superior to feel stable, and he does not accept feeling inferior to remain safe. He stays centered within himself, guided by internal standards rather than external rankings. For those who depend on hierarchy to feel secure, this calm equality feels like a rejection of the social order itself. That perceived rejection triggers anxiety, resentment, and sometimes hostility, not because the Sigma male attacks the system, but because his presence quietly exposes how fragile it really is. Point 4, they are comfortable with extended silence. Silence is revealing because it strips away distraction and removes the noise people use to avoid themselves. When words disappear, awareness is forced to the surface. Most people experience silence not as peace, but as pressure. It creates a subtle tension in the mind, a feeling that something must be done to restore balance. This is why so many rush to fill quiet moments with unnecessary explanations, jokes, opinions, or emotional disclosures. They are not communicating, they are relieving discomfort. The Sigma male, however, does not experience silence as something that needs to be fixed. He remains present without performing, without reaching outward for reassurance, and without feeling compelled to shape the moment. This alone alters conversational dynamics almost immediately. In the absence of his verbal input, the other person becomes more aware of themselves. Their posture shifts. Their thoughts accelerate. They begin speaking more than intended, revealing opinions, insecurities, or motivations they would normally keep guarded. Silence subtly hands them the mirror. The Sigma male listens without interruption or visible reaction. He does not nod excessively, reassure, or challenge. This lack of feedback creates the impression of scrutiny, even when none is intended. Humans are deeply uncomfortable being observed without validation. When feedback disappears, the mind turns inward, searching for cues, judging itself, and replaying its own words in real time. Silence removes the social padding that normally softens interaction and forces introspection to occur. The Sigma male's comfort in this space signals something rare: self-sufficiency. He does not require external stimulation, approval, or constant exchange to regulate his emotional state. His nervous system remains steady without input. This independence unsettles those who rely on interaction to distract from their internal noise. Around him, silence often feels heavier, not because he is threatening, but because the quiet exposes what others have been avoiding. In that stillness, the Sigma male does nothing extraordinary. He simply remains grounded. Yet that grounded presence becomes revealing, not of him, but of everyone else. Point 5, they exit situations without drama or closure. Many people unconsciously use conflict as a tool for emotional resolution. Arguments, explanations, apologies, long discussions, and even dramatic confrontations serve a psychological purpose. They create narrative closure. They allow the mind to label an ending, assign blame, extract meaning, and finally move on. The Sigma male does not operate within this framework. When a situation, relationship, or environment no longer aligns with his internal values, he disengages quietly. He does not announce his withdrawal. He does not explain himself in detail. He does not argue his position or seek validation for his decision. He simply removes his presence. This absence of emotional resolution is deeply unsettling to those who are conditioned to negotiate boundaries through conversation and conflict. The human mind is wired to search for patterns and explanations. When none are given, it loops endlessly. People replay conversations, scrutinize past interactions, search for hidden signals, and invent meanings that may not exist. Psychologically, unresolved endings create more distress than direct rejection, because rejection still provides information. Silence provides none. The Sigma male's quiet exit communicates finality without hostility. It sends a clear signal that his boundaries are internal, firm, and non-negotiable. There is no debate, because the decision was never external to begin with. To those accustomed to emotional bargaining, this can feel cold, dismissive, or even cruel. In reality, it is clarity without performance. The Sigma male does not weaponize emotion, nor does he seek to teach lessons through conflict. He understands that prolonged engagement drains energy and creates unnecessary psychological entanglement. His withdrawal is not meant to provoke regret or confusion, though it often does. It is not punishment, manipulation, or avoidance. It is alignment. He chooses internal coherence over external validation. By refusing to participate in emotional theatrics, he denies others the closure they expect, forcing them to confront their own dependency on explanation and reassurance. This is why his absence lingers so powerfully in the minds of others. There was no final argument to dissect, no apology to accept, no dramatic ending to file away. There is only silence and distance, which the mind finds intolerable. Yet for the Sigma male, this silence is peaceful. It reflects a deep understanding that not every ending requires words, and not every boundary needs to be defended. His quiet departure is simply the natural consequence of self-respect in motion. Point 6. They appear internally complete. Perhaps the most unsettling trait of all is internal completeness, a quiet and often misunderstood state of being that the Sigma male embodies without announcement or performance. He does not appear to need emotional reassurance, social validation, or constant engagement to feel anchored in himself. He enjoys connection, values meaningful exchange, and can appreciate companionship deeply. Yet he is not dependent on it for his sense of worth or stability. This distinction is subtle but profound. In many social and relational structures, power is built on exchange, attention for approval, affection for reassurance, and presence for influence. When someone participates in this system, they become predictable. When someone does not, the system destabilizes. The Sigma male's self-sufficiency quietly disrupts these dynamics because there is nothing to bargain with. His fulfillment is generated internally, drawn from personal standards, purpose-driven living, and disciplined self-respect, rather than external affirmation. This form of completeness is rare, not because it is unattainable, but because it requires prolonged solitude, self-examination, and the courage to detach from social dependency. Humans are biologically and psychologically attuned to signals of need. We read them instinctively in tone, behavior, posture, and emotional reactions. When we encounter someone who does not emit these signals, the nervous system does not relax, it becomes alert. The absence of need creates uncertainty. The Sigma male does not chase, does not cling, and does not demand to be understood. He does not explain himself excessively or attempt to manage how he is perceived. He stands whole within himself, unmoved by approval and unthreatened by misunderstanding. To many, this posture is unsettling because it cannot be easily categorized. It is often misinterpreted as coldness, superiority, or emotional distance, when in reality it is autonomy in its purest form. He is not withdrawn from others, he is simply not fused to them. This independence challenges those who unconsciously rely on influence, emotional leverage, or validation loops to feel secure. People fear what they cannot influence, not out of malice, but out of psychological self-protection. Influence provides predictability, and predictability feels safe. Internal completeness removes that predictability. It is influence-proof, not because it resists others, but because it does not require anything from them. The Sigma male's presence quietly communicates a deeper truth. When a person becomes internally whole, external forces lose their grip. This does not make him powerful by domination, but by freedom. And freedom, when witnessed up close, can be deeply unsettling to those who have never cultivated it within themselves. The Sigma male does not cultivate fear, nor does he seek to unsettle others through dominance or control. What he cultivates instead is self-mastery, an inner discipline that frees him from emotional dependency on external approval. The discomfort people experience in his presence does not come from aggression, intimidation, or manipulation, but from the absence of need. His silence is not passive, it is deliberate. His stillness is not emptiness, it is containment. By remaining self-possessed, he unintentionally exposes the invisible psychological habits that govern most social interactions. Around him, people become aware of how often they speak to be validated, perform to be accepted, or attempt to steer others for reassurance. The Sigma male does not point this out, judge it, or challenge it directly. He simply refuses to participate in these unconscious exchanges. In doing so, he becomes a mirror rather than an actor in the social dynamic. What unsettles others is not who he is, but what they recognize about themselves in his presence. That quiet recognition lingers long after he has gone.